Hey, welcome back. It is Chris Nichols here with PetaPixel, and today I am playing with the brand new Sony G Master 16-35 f2.8 version 2. This is the last of the trifecta that has to be updated, the 70-200, the 24-70, and now we've got the 16-35. Let's play with it. Jordan and I have our families out here. We're vacationing in British Columbia, and we're at beautiful Margaret Falls today. This is an interesting lens to play with because, you know, the 70-200 2.8, the 24-70 G Master, the original versions, they really did need updating. And also, Sony was able to make them not only sharper and better, but also smaller and more compact. The 16-35, though, the original G Master, was a great lens. Didn't really need updating, so I can see why they saved it till last. So, do we have some important upgrades that are worth investing in with the second version? That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, my weapon of choice today is the brand new Sony a7CR with its 60 megapixel sensor. Great for testing a lens like this today. This also just released the same day as the Sony G Master 16-35, so you should check out that video as well. So as you can see, the BC government has made this flooring perfect for tripod use. So it's been 6 years since the original Sony G Master 16-35. What has changed? Was it worth the wait? Well, first thing is, although the original lens wasn't that heavy, 680 grams, they have managed to reduce this down to 547, and that is a significant difference. I mean, we're just over a quarter of a knot. 82mm filter thread. Of course, as a Sony G Master, it is constructed beautifully, very rugged, fully weather sealed. The hood on here you can see is actually quite tiny, very shallow, so this all aids in just keeping the package compact, not only as you're holding it, but also in the camera bag. Like all G Masters, the manual focus ring is pretty slippy sloppy. Don't know why they keep doing that. We got the usual customizable buttons here on the side, autofocus, manual focus selector switch, and a very nice zoom. Now, this is an external zooming lens, although as you can see, it's incredibly minor actual shift. But the elements move backwards as you zoom, so it actually stays balanced even while zooming. That might be really nice if you're doing video applications with a gimbal, for example, and you want to change your zoom. Unlike the original lens, we now do have a proper aperture ring. This you can also set for declickable, which is really nice if you want that smooth transition. And you can also lock the iris with the iris lock switch here. So, very full-featured lens. So one of the things I love about shooting here at Margaret Falls is you get all of these crisscross logs and shafts of sunlight coming through. So it's a really nice test for flare, ghosting, and sunstars. So let's talk about that next. So first, like all Sony G Masters, the coatings are great. Flare is not really an issue. I'm not getting a lot of washed out areas, not getting a lot of loss of contrast. Ghosting, however, you do notice. It's not obtrusive and it's not terrible, but even at f8, you'll start to see some purple ghosting across the frame, and as you stop down, it just becomes more and more apparent. But what about sunstars? I mean, those are always fun to have in a good landscape lens like this. Well, as you can see here, actually, they're quite nice. I mean, they're not the best I've seen, but the tines on each star are actually pretty distinct. They only kind of smear a little bit, and really you get a nice, dramatic, multi-pointed star when you're shooting towards the sun. So the Sony G Master 16-35 2.8 version 2 has actually some versatility as a close-up lens. You can see here, luckily, I've got a shallow hood because the working distance isn't great. I mean, this is my minimum distance right here. You can see I'm getting about 4 inches away from the front of the element, but I am getting 1 to 3 life-size reproduction at 35 millimeters, and that's where this lens does its best close-up work. Okay, so on the Sony G Master 16-35 2.8, the autofocus, this is way too loud, Jordan. I can barely hear.
I'm sorry, this was my bad. I thought waterfalls were quiet.
What is it about the whole water and falling that you didn't get? Okay, so now that it's quieter, let's talk about autofocusing. So the G Master 16-35 version 2 is powered by 4 XD linear motors. Autofocus, as you'd expect, as you can see here, very snappy, even from minimum focusing distance to infinity. You're not gonna have any issues with autofocusing speed on this lens. Now, because we have such a beautiful location, I really wanted to take a nice environmental portrait of my son with the Sony 16-35, and I wanted it to be flash-based lighting. Now, Westcott, PetaPixel's preferred lighting partner, was kind enough to hook us up with an FJ200 wireless flash and also a rapid box switch Octa S. And this is all really nice and compact. It can fit easily into a backpack. I didn't even have to bring a light stand because I've got a really tall Jordan Drake with me. Time to talk about Bokeh, longitudinal chromatic aberration. This is where everybody's eyes roll up the back of their head. And this is where we look for a color cast in the foreground and background out-of-focus areas. Luckily, Sony G Master, very well controlled. Bokeh really was an issue even in bright, high contrast situations, so no worries. So now we've got this nice out-of-focus background. It's a good time to talk about Bokeh. So first off, wide open. I was surprised how little cat's eye effect there is, even in the corners. It's very minimal. And stop down, you can see the Bokeh is still quite round, quite smooth. So that's really nice. It does have a bit of soap bubble effect, and that does give you a bit of a dramatic, energetic kind of look to out-of-focus areas, but transitions from in-focus to out-of-focus are smooth and beautiful, like we expect out of the G Masters. Now, one place where the original lens had no issues with sharpness. So let's now take a look at our test charts and see if this lens is the same. So first, let's take a look at the sharpness at 16 millimeters in the center, shooting wide open at f2.8. I was actually amazed by how much detail there was right off the bat wide open. Stopping down to f5.6, if there's an improvement, it's almost imperceptible. It was already incredibly sharp at 2.8. The improvement is minor. Focusing in the corners, again, I found this lens to be very consistent. You can see you're shooting f2.8 wide open. It is sharp in the corners. Stopping down to f5.6, it's a very similar story. Then when you go to 35 millimeters to see the sharpness there, again, I had a really hard time seeing any flaws here. Shooting wide open f2.8 in the centers at 35 millimeters, it looks great. And it's the same idea. You can stop down the lens, you get slight improvements to contrast overall, but really, it's already fantastic wide open. And we have the same story as well in the corners. Shooting at f2.8 here at 35 millimeters, lots of detail. Stopping down at 5.6 doesn't really improve things that much. So overall, I was incredibly impressed with just how sharp this lens is, how consistent it is across the zoom range, and how good it is even shooting wide open at f2.8. You know, Jordan, we're coming to the end of the episode, and I just cannot stop thinking about it.
Thinking about what, Chris?
PicFlow software.
Of course.
Right? It's amazing next generation online gallery software. Unleashes tons of creative collaboration because I could make my own gallery of the photos that we took today, and then I can invite you in and you can make annotations, you can suggest changes, you can leave comments, and that way I don't have to see you in person all the time.
But you don't enjoy my company?
Sure, but like not as much as I enjoy using PicFlow software and making their galleries. And also, big thanks to PicFlow for being the sponsor for today's episode. So I've now had the opportunity to look at all three of the modern updated 2.8 zooms from Sony. The 7200 was a huge improvement over the old version, the 24-70 as well. Yeah, this one's not improving much optically, which is just because the first one was already very good, but I like the optical performance here. I think the bokeh is quite interesting. Nice sunstars, good close-up. I mean, it's a versatile wide-angle zoom and does exactly what you want a 2.8 zoom to do. And yet they were able to make it more compact and lighter weight. I mean, the real magic is if you have the new version of the 7200, the 24-70, and this, all three lenses are actually very easy to carry, don't add a lot of weight, and there's a lot of value there. You know, if you had the original 24-70 or 7200, I would probably still say, yeah, it's probably worth upgrading to the new versions. But if you have the original 16-35, I would stick with that. It's a great lens, not necessarily worth upgrading to this unless you really want to shave a little bit of weight and size off. But if you don't have a 16-35 2.8 yet, this is a great way to go. Hope you guys enjoyed our little look at the 16-35 G Master f2.8 version 2. Do leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Please subscribe to the channel. Like the video while you're at it. Click that notification bell. And do check out our podcast. You can see it on this channel or go to your favorite podcasting apps. Just look for PetaPixel Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.